Perfect. Good evening. Well, we'll get started. So, our topic for this evening: ISPs, Internet Service Providers. They're everywhere. They all do things a little differently. What are they? What is an ISP, right? Well, an ISP is simply someone who provides you internet. Seems fairly self-explanatory, but you know that may be the case. Good time for that unit over there to do a self-test. Don't you mess with me over there, piece of hardware. I'm telling you, what a good time for a self-test. Distracting, yes, but not for not. ISPs, yes, those crazy things. Internet service providers is just simply someone who provides you internet. Now, that could either be someone that you directly get your service from, like say, you get internet on your cell phone, right? Most smartphones can do that, or it could be a landline internet connection like you have in your home. Other things that could be considered ISPs that you don't interact directly with, but you still do, is like, say, in an apartment complex. Like a dormitory, right, where the campus has one network. You don't specifically pay for the internet, but technically your campus is your ISP, because if you have network trouble, who do you talk to? Well, your campus. You don't talk to the people who provide the internet to the campus, right? So those are ISPs, right? In its most basic of sense, that's what one is. Now, amongst the madness, why am I talking about this? Well, a couple of reasons. ISPs are everywhere, and there is different kinds of internet service providers, or ISPs. They all have a varying level of pros and cons, and if you are recently looking to do the whole, living on your own thing, or potentially opening up a business, you're going to need internet, right? But what's available for one person may not be available for another, or one option might be more practical than the other depending on, circumstance. So, first things first, let's talk about the different types of ISPs there are. So, I'm going to swing back over to here, and I'm going to list them. And as I list them, we're going to then build up a little list of some pros and cons. So, the most painful of all the options, which is one that I want to say for the most part, people don't use anymore. It's fine. It's fine, Alistar. You'll be okay. This is why we're talking about internet, hon, because sometimes it wants to play games like that. My word. So yes, ISPs, the most painful of all the options, is dial-up. It's gonna hurt you fundamentally. Now, I'm going to list them out, and then I'm going to kind of get back to it, right? So, that's the most painful option. Dial-up. Don't do it. It's a trap. There's literally never a use case for it anymore. But still, we're going to talk about it, because it's still relevant. And then, it's runner-up, which is definitely better. Frankly, anything is better. A carrier pigeon with a USB flash drive on its leg would be better than dial-up. I can promise you that. But... no, I really don't need pros for this one. I don't need pros for dial-up, but I'm going to list it anyway. Now, the real trick is, can I come up with any? I don't know if I can. I'll give it a thought. We'll see what happens. Maybe something poor. Maybe something poor and bad. Whatever. It's fine. Then we have DSL. DSL is a... I don't want all caps. DSL is one of those technologies that is still used in a fair amount around the world. And both dial-up and DSL both use phone lines to provide their service. But dial-up is painfully slower than DSL. I'm going to get into it, but it's interesting. They both provide the same thing at drastically different speeds, but they use the same stuff. They just use it differently. So then we also have cable internet. This is the one that most people are familiar with, or it's maybe I'll say more common. And then we've got some other goodies here. Got fiber. Because who doesn't love playing with a light? I know I do. And then we've got some other flavors mixed in here with cellular. Now, part of what's going to happen this evening is I have a little bit of a lab where we're going to actually visually see some of the different speeds I'm going to talk about. We'll see how well that works. And then we've got satellite. Oh god, can I spell satellite? I can't. Spell check, save me! Thank you! No, it's fine. You just start to the top of the document. I can't spell. It's not gonna happen. Okay. And then SpaceX. SpaceX is gonna be its own thing. It's still a type of satellite, but there's a reason it's gonna be listed separately. I didn't think about it. I'm gonna add some spaces between these just so it's a little easier to look at. You say good old, but you got half of it right. It's old, all right. Okay. I know we can't see all of it, but I'll do a little scrolling as it's relevant. So, dial-up. It pains me. It pains me to say this. There are people still using it. And, unfortunately, this is one of those things that, pretty much you're using dial-up because you don't have a better option. Or no options, unfortunately. So what is it? It provides internet, but in what capacity, right? So, the dial-up internet is one of those things that started the internet, for the most part. This is the one that consumers were familiar with when the internet started to become commercialized. Now, the theory as to why it's so slow is a part of how it works. Because this is the analog version of the internet. Everybody's familiar with the idea of something that's digital, right? You wandered in here and you loaded up a website and it was provided to you very quickly. And if you can see me without me jittering across the screen, you're watching in good enough quality that it's smooth, right? Well, that's because it's presented in a digital format. And what happens is that dial-up is an analog internet connection. So what happens when you want to get online when you have a dial-up connection? is your modem that plugs into a phone jack. Something that people don't even have in their homes anymore. A landline telephone. That thing no one uses anymore for the most part. It makes a phone call. And it sounds an awful lot like if you've ever sent a fax. It's a lot of funky noises. It sounds like gibberish in scribbles. If you could scribble, but in digital sounds, that's kind of what you come up with. Take dubstep. Make it go wub 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 on the phone. That's dial-up. But what happens is that it places a phone call to your ISP. And then your ISP on the other end of the phone call then starts initializing the connection. And it's a literal audible phone call of transferring your data back and forth between you and your ISP. It's painfully slow. We're going to cover some numbers later. I don't want to get into the numbers right now. But it's so slow that I could promise you, if you are in the middle of watching this stream right now, you're not doing it on dial-up. Because dial-up just simply does not have the capacity to do this. And that's okay. Because frankly, it's not really for what it is. Pros. When it comes to dial-up. Can I find any? Well, maybe. The reality is that dial-up, even though it's really not used anymore, it does come in handy for certain things. Being that you can actually send transmission from places where there's practically no civilization, as long as you've got a hard phone line. This is actually good for if you have card terminals. So say credit card machines. If you have truly no other options and you're in the middle of the sticks and you have a business, well, with a dial-up internet connection, your card reader could still send that information to the bank to process the card transaction, even though you have no other options. Now, I've actually been in a store before that had dial-up for processing credit cards, and the owner could have had faster internet, but just simply chose dial-up because of the fact of how cheap it was provided to them, because they were not going to use the internet for anything else, literally just for processing cards. You would stand there in front of the register and wait for your card to process. That processing time took about approximately 2 whole minutes to run your card. Now, if it was your only option, frankly, okay, that makes kind of some sense, right? But if you have a store full of customers, 2 minutes may feel like an eternity, because everybody just has the get up and go bug in the States. It just happens. That's how it is. We're used to things being fast, and things have gotten so much faster over the years. This is one of those things that people don't want to go backwards. I can't say I blame them. Do you think if you could use dial-up from a phone booth? So funny enough, yes, I totally believe you could. And the reason I'd say that is because of the fact that it's an audible phone call. So what your computer's doing is dialing a phone number and then literally chatting with your ISP. So realistically speaking, as long as you can take your laptop, in this case it would have to be a portable computer, with a dial-up modem in it, and plug it into another phone jack, you can get a actual internet connection off of that. In the case of a phone booth, that'd be kind of fun. Slap some coins in there, call up your ISP, and then take an actual handset and put it up to the speaker. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm pretty sure you could probably get that to work, because I got to see it in some of the labs back in school, where you would have an actual physical handset that you would stick in a receiver to make the phone call to the ISP. So realistically speaking, if you could get a microphone hooked up and speaker hooked up to the telephone in the booth, yeah, you probably could. It would probably be easily one of the most expensive phone calls you'd probably ever make, because by the time you transfer, I don't know, maybe it would probably cost you several full dollars to send an email and just the money to use the phone booth for the time it would take to send the message. Oh God. I mean, if you can manage to find a phone booth, then yes, you can most certainly try that. I mean, in all fairness, I don't think if anybody was trying to trace your steps would be looking for the guy wandering around with a phone modem in a phone booth. So I don't know, maybe you're onto something. Ah, yes. So when no other options, that's what you're gonna go with. Cons of dial-up. Oh boy, I've said it several times. It's slow. Like, really slow. It gets to be listed more than once because it's true. It also requires older proprietary hardware that simply isn't in modern computers, right? So, old unused hardware, right? You're not going to buy a laptop or a desktop computer that has a faxing modem in it. It's just not going to happen. Now, you can easily buy a USB to dial-up adapter, right? Those adapters are actually really good for sending and receiving faxes on a computer too. If you want to go old school, you might as well go the whole distance. $7 to send. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, stamps are cheaper, and you know, you know what? That's probably the only thing that's slower than dial-up. It would be the actual physical postal service. But you know what? You know what? I'm gonna say not by much. That's how I feel about that. Oh God, honestly, it would feel faster to send a letter, only because of the simple facts that at least when you send a letter, you're not standing and waiting. You just know in a couple of days it's gonna happen, and that's okay. Not in the case of dial-up, you're gonna wait, and it's gonna take forever. Okay, that's dial-up. It hurts. It's slow. It's basically not usable in today's environment because the way that the internet's gone at this point, loading just a basic web page that doesn't do anything special, no live feeds. Like, I'm talking like, take like a basic government website that basically just has written text, maybe some clickable links, and that's about it, right? So there's no like multimedia, there's no videos, there's no ads. Heaven forbid you try to access a website with ads on it. On a dial-up connection. You're gonna die. We're gonna sit there probably about a week for it to load. My word. I'm kind of amazed at Truly that it still kicks around. But I mean, like I said, the fact that it can send data in places that, you know, others can't. There's a reason it's still a thing, but not one that, you know, makes anybody feel any better. So, that'd be that one. On to the next one. DSL. DSL, like I had mentioned, compared to the beast known as dial-up, still uses phone lines, but it uses it differently. So, what DSL does, a digital subscriber line, or DSL, that one uses a wavelength to send your connection digitally across the telephone line. Now, it's interesting because when you have a DSL connection, you have to actually have these things called filters, line filters, that you have to actually plug into all of your phones that are on that DSL connection. Now, one of the benefits of DSL over dial-up I did not actually mention, you can't use your phone and your internet at the same time on a dial-up connection because it's making an actual audio phone call. In the case of DSL, that's not the case. In DSL, you can use your phone while on the internet. That's a thing you can do. Because it's not making an audible phone call. It's doing some signal. It's called signal modulation, which is a big crazy word for what that is. And what it's doing is it's using a digital connection to move the data back and forth between the internet and you. And the nice thing about this is that the speeds of DSL are at least usable in today's world. It's still slow compared to all the other options I have on the list here. But if you had, DSL as an option over dial-up, I'd choose literally anything over dial-up. DSL is another good option when there's no others. Because at least this way you can get a couple meg worth of speed without, completely losing your mind. The cons of DSL, it is slow, but it's not painfully slow. And like I said, I have a little lab we're going to go through where I'm actually going to, give you an example of what these different things mean that I'm talking about when it comes to the speeds. Because I don't really want to talk numbers, because, frankly, without me seeing something, the numbers would mean nothing. I'd imagine for you, it'd probably feel the same. So I'm going to shy away from the numbers for the moment. Cons of DSL. One of the cons of DSL and dial-up both share. Or actually, no, I lie. That's actually not shared between the two. A DSL has a physical distance limitation. To the central office. So if you're too far away from the central office, you can't get DSL. You physically have to be close to the or central office for you to get this type of internet connection. Because the farther away from the you are, the slower the service will be. So if the internet provider is going to guarantee you, guarantee's a strong word with DSL, a certain speed tier, if you're too far away from that building, it ain't gonna work. You're not gonna get the speeds you want. Your brain runs on dial-up. Some days my brain works on dial-up. Some days it works at cable speed. It's kind of what happens. If it's ever running at fiber speed, I'm not talking that day, and that's okay, because there's too many pieces moving around. So yeah, DSL is another one of those things that it's interesting though, because with the little filters you have to plug into your phones, because again, a DSL connection is still provided via a phone line, a hard line, telephone line connection. And the thing about DSL and POTS lines, or plain old telephone system, in this case dial-up, that's the same thing. If the power goes out, phone line that's provided via the actual telephone lines don't go out with it. As long as the central office doesn't blow up and you lose power, where, if none of that stuff has, backup generation, it'll still work. Now, granted, it works with the caveat. If you have cordless phones in your house that are plugged into an old style, POTS line, it's going to go out because your base is going to have no power. And then the cordless phones don't work. But if you have a corded phone plugged into the wall that then is wired to the outside world with nothing in between, it will still work when the power goes out. Which is why, actually, they say during lightning storms, stay away from landline phones. Because if a telephone pole gets hit by lightning, guess where the electricity can go? It can go down those lines. And guess what comes into your house? Those same lines. And you know what's connected to the other end of them? Your phone. So don't ever use a landline phone during a thunderstorm, because there's a chance, ergo slim, that it could be energized by a bolt of lightning. That would be bad. Don't do that. No one wants to be, toasty. It's interesting. It's also kind of dangerous. Actually, they used to promote that safety on that quite a bit, before, when it was more popular. Now it's more of just a cool fact at this point, because, like I said, most people don't have this kind of stuff anymore. DSL is still very common in the world. Like I said, for most people that have it, it's because they don't have any other option. But when push comes to shove, not too bad. Yeah, shocking discovery. Tell me about it. Yeah, if you want to, blow all of the fuzz completely off your head, have your ears no longer be all shaky. Yeah, well, maybe it'd be extra shaky. I don't know. Be careful, Safety, number one priority. That's okay. Oh yeah, something else I want to actually mention about DSL is that it's actually fairly stable. Granted, like any internet service, when I talk about stability of the service, if you're having trouble where there's damage to the equipment that makes your service function, there's no stability. But for all intents and purposes, for this evening's conversation, if I say it's stable, in its best case scenario, it's more or less stable. When it comes to an actual internet connection, DSL is definitely more stable than dial-up. Since dial-up also has the whole like audible thing where there's actual hearable sound, that also can be, introduced with noise, which makes it more difficult for the ISP to actually pass the data back and forth. With DSL, you don't have that problem because it's a digital signal, so there's no sound to wander around. Just, bits and bytes flying around your head. Okay. With that, we have cable internet. This is by far one of the most common that I see that people tend to use, myself included. Some of the pros of cable internet is the very, very vast speeds that you can get a connection of this at. So there's also speed options available for cable internet, which is really nice. Since there's such a variety of speeds, that also means there's usually a fair variety of packages you can pay for, which also tends to help when working on a budget. No one needs to purchase the most expensive internet connection, even if they have a bunch of devices in their house. It doesn't have to be like that. And that's perfectly fine. One of the cons of cable provided internet over the other options, in comparison to DSL and dial-up, there really isn't any direct con, but one of the cons that I can mention to you, because of the fact that DSL and dial-up both work over phone lines, you're not required to have a phone line over a cable internet connection. It's not required. But if you wanted a phone number to be provided over cable internet, you can. It's perfectly fine, but it won't work if the power goes out in most cases. So there is no EMS when power is out. And that would be emergency services. Fire rescue, police, ambulatory services. Those aren't available over a telephone line provided via cable service. As long as you know that, that's fine. Most people have cell phones. And this is one of those cases that when it comes to safety, it makes sense to have a cell phone on hand that has good service. So then you don't have to worry about the idea of, having no phone service when the power goes out. Now, when your power goes out, if the building that's providing your cable internet has backup generators, then there's a good chance you actually won't lose your internet connection if you have backup power yourself. Where the issue comes in when it comes to losing your internet connection when your power goes out is if there's these things called boosters wired in directly out on the telephone lines, or on the telephone poles, excuse me. If there's a booster that's hardwired into the power grid outside your house that makes your cable connection reach you, then if the power goes out, the booster's going to die. And if the booster dies, you're going to lose your internet connection. Now, could you potentially still be able to access your internet on dial-up or DSL when the power goes out? Technically speaking, as long as the actual provider itself does not lose power, the answer is yes. In the case of a cable provider, if there's boosters, which just simply takes the signal, pushes it through the wire, it hits the booster, and then it just pushes it again to get to you. If that's tied into the power out on the pole, you're going to lose your internet. Now, not every place. That's not something that's uniform. I'm just saying simply if it's a thing, then that's what's going to happen. Now, would you know if that was going to happen? Well, you can ask your ISP. I would imagine most people, if you called in, would probably not know the answer to that question. I'd say probably the best way to find out is wait for your power to go out. And then check. If you have backup power now running, do you have internet? If the answer is no, you probably have boosters. Or the central office lost its connection and, well, everybody's sitting in the dark. I don't know, open up a pack of cards at that point. I don't know, light some candles, put on a mood. Push comes to shove. Oh, it's terrible. Yes, that's cable internet. It's dumb. It's fine. Lots of variety and options, which is fine. The nice thing too is that when you get cable provided internet, you can get all three. Most cable providers will provide you all of the things. They will provide you internet, phone, and TV. You can get all three, which is fine. Some internet service providers have gotten away from providing actual cable boxes via coax cable, which is that black cable that screws into the back of your cable modem. It's a little round connector. In lieu of giving you what's basically a streaming box that you would put on your network, and then you can watch your cable that way. I know some areas have been phasing out actual physical wired cable, and it kind of makes sense. I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but stay with me here. With cable-provided television, you need actual physical cable wired into the splitters. That has to be somewhere in your house that then eventually makes its way back outside. If you're in a rental, or if you're in a new construction build, unless you specifically requested that kind of cable to be run all over your house, you're probably not going to have it. Or if you're in an older home, a lot of older homes didn't have coax cable. Most of them had telephone wire all over the place. Because the reality is that most people did have a hard landline telephone pole in the houses that were built in the 60s and 70s. At least that's on some of the homes that I've seen recently, speaking, that are of that age. You'll see one and not the other. And when it comes to getting the television, then, having a streaming service to access your cable package is fine. Some of them provide a physical box, some of them just give you a login, you download an app, and then there you go, you can access your television. Indeed. But that's cable internet. Next one on the hit list here is going to be fiber internet. Now, fiber internet's super fun to play with. It's very cool stuff. Fiber internet, its obvious biggest pro is the speed. Big letters. Speed. I am speed. Fiber internet is easily the fastest thing. It certainly is. Because there's multiple levels to the internet when it comes to internet service providers. A tier 1 ISP is the people that we interact with directly. So you call up and you get your mobile service, from your mobile carrier. Or you get a home internet connection. And that you call whatever local business is in your area. And if they provide fiber, that's level 1. If it's an ISP that gives internet to other ISPs, that's a tier 2 ISP. And then everything else that connects all that other stuff together is tier 3. So it's one big spider web of connections that hooks it all together. But the thing is that a lot of the connections that happen between ISPs or the levels that go even deeper in the internet are actually connected with fiber. Fiber is incredibly thin strands of glass spread out over miles, literal miles, that actually make the internet work. And a part of fiber internet is actually how we connect a lot of continents together that are hundreds of miles apart from each other in undersea buried cables. These things are awesome. I would definitely recommend doing a little research if you're interested, because the undersea buried cables are absolutely astonishing to see. They're huge. They're probably a good 2 feet in diameter because of how big they are, because they get buried under the ground, or under the ocean rather, for the most part. There's usually unmanned robots that bury those things. It's super cool. You can find lots of stuff online about that, about how that kind of works. But when it comes to the speed of fiber, it transmits via light. So it actually shoots beams of light in different modes and mechanisms to actually make it work. So when it goes to send information, it can either be single mode, where it's just one light flashing on and off really, really fast, or it could be multi-mode. Multi-mode is super wild. It doesn't go as far, so the actual connection between your house and the central office couldn't be as far as a single mode connection. Now granted, I know ISPs out on the internet probably do this slightly little differently, but if you were to get your hands on a switch, a commercial grade switch for doing internet stuff, you can buy fiber modules that are either single mode or multi-mode, which allows you to connect them together. With a multi-mode fiber connection, it shoots the beam of light at multiple angles down the glass strand. And then it gets accepted on the other end from bouncing off the walls of the little strand of glass on the other end. And then it gets put back together, and then you have your connection. It can't go as far, but you can fit more speed down the same strand of glass, which is really neat. But single mode is just on off. It goes really, really fast and really, really far. The thing with connecting stuff together with this, fiber is easily the distance. And it's also not bothered by external factors. So another pro of fiber is that it's fairly immune. It's fairly immune to external sources. So what I mean by that is that if you have a fiber connection, right, and you live next to, say, a power plant, and there's some pretty big transformers that are near your house, those transformers give off electromagnetic interference, or EMI. And the problem is that EMI can cause your stuff to misbehave, because it can mix with the signals that you're sending. It comes in and then it scrambles everything, and then you lose what you initially tried to send. Since fiber is a strand of glass with just lights blinking on and off, it's completely immune to any other kind of radio interference because it's not electrical. It's funny. It's visual, right? Because dial-up is audible. It's incredibly slow. It's painfully slow. But we switch to light. In the speed of light. You think about how fast light moves. How fast is light? I'm actually going to look that up. Light moves incredibly fast. Like crazy fast. Alright. I need this in miles per hour for a hot second, because this is such a big number. You're hearing all the pros of your fiber, yet you don't feel like you've seen it. It's only cons. Yeah, no, that's fair. Like I said, it's, best case scenario. It's kind of what I'm covering. Now, granted, in all fairness, it may not be as fast for you as the speed of light, but another thing that we're going to talk about this evening is data caps, and when your ISP slows you down. Because even though that light can travel at 186,000 miles per second. Per second! does not mean your ISP is going to let you go that fast. Now, I for giggles, I converted this to miles per hour, and it's such a big number. I'm not going to try to read it because it's huge, but that's the number in miles per hour that light moves at. It's 6696 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros on the end. That's incredibly fast. And in kilometers, it's even faster. Well, it's not faster, but it'd be a bigger number because conversions. But my word. Yeah, no. That's fast. Case in point. So, fiber. Fiber's got the speed, right? That's okay. One of the cons of fiber is brittle. It's very brittle. Since it's a very incredibly thin strand, right? Like now, when I'm talking a thin strand of anything, what does that mean in context? Look at one of the hairs on your head. That's how thin a fiber strand is. It's small. It's incredibly small. It's actually fascinating to watch the people who deploy fiber and install it in businesses and, out and about to put the connectors on. Because if you think about it, if it's this tiny little strand that's no bigger than the hair on your head, how do you put a connector on that? Because you think about like how you plug in the power connector into your laptop. It's, fairly durable, but I mean, it's just a hunk of copper that hooks it, the wires together in there. But think about putting a connector on something that's no thinner than your hair. Well, it's really cool to watch because they put the connector inside of this machine, and then it looks like a small nuclear explosion, and then the connector's on it. It's really neat. It's fascinating to watch. That's another item I would absolutely recommend looking up how to terminate fiber. It is super cool. There's just... It's just neat. It's neat to watch. Even if you don't care about networking or anything I'm talking about, look that one up. How to terminate fiber. It's super cool. Even if you never wanted to do it or cared about it, it's just cool to watch. But yeah, it's brittle, and that'd be what it is. And then this we talked about this is long distances. And then we got the last three here. We've got cellular. Now, cellular has some pretty good speeds. And it's available in a lot of places. There's a lot of different cellular providers, which means you actually have a lot more competition. Lots of options in providers for cellular. Now, I know that most people, when they think of a cellular connection, they think of their actual cellular phone, but you actually can get an internet connection through cellular service with a SIM card that's not a phone. Different providers will call them different things. Some of them will call it a data fob. Some companies call it a jetpack, where it's just a little device, you turn it on, and then you can connect your devices to it. And it provides your device internet over a cellular network. Think about your laptop for a minute. Your laptop you could take to a coffee shop. Say it's an old coffee shop and they don't have Wi-Fi. Well, if you brought a jetpack with you, or a data fob, you can connect that to your laptop, and now you're on the cellular network in the coffee shop without bothering nobody else. You're paying for the service, but you're able to take that service with you. It's very mobile. Some of the cons is that the connection could be kind of spotty, so the reliability could be questionable. And this is where we see how bad I am at spelling. No shame, I will use spell check on stream. Did I actually spell it right? No, there's no way. There's no way I spelled that right. I don't believe it. Yeah, no, didn't think so. That's better. Yeah, exactly. A cellular hotspot is an excellent example of a cellular connection, because most cellular providers, you can go on your cell phone and tell it to make a connection, a hotspot that you can connect your stuff to. Um, but you're not required. What is this music? Hey God, that's horribly distracting. Oh goodness. Okay. Yeah. So with the cellular hotspot, it's the same thing. There's actually some cellular providers that are actually pushing for home internet with their service, where they give you just a dedicated box that you plug in your house. It sits near a window, and then it provides you internet to your house. Cool thing about that is that when it's time to move, whether you're in an apartment complex or something similar, you don't have to make a call to your ISP to tell them you're canceling service. You just take it, you stick it in a box, you pack it, you move, you get to your new place, you plug it in, you have internet. As long as there's cellular reception that's good, then literally nothing will be different for you. You just moved your internet by just picking it up and leaving, which is cool. One of the cons of cellular, though, is the fact that it's data throttled and data capped. So, some cable providers do cap on how much data you can use. But usually it's a crazy big number for the most part on a residential connection. I know in the space of Comcast, which is a really big ISP in the States, that if you're residential, they have a cap of 1 terabyte. If you download more than 1 terabyte in a billing cycle, you will be data throttled. Or actually, I don't recall. It's either there's some penalty. Either you get data throttled, or they add on an additional bill for you, additional cost, additional fee for you going over that set limit. I know if you're on a business account that those limits don't apply. So if you're running a business, you'd be better off paying for the business speed, or the business plan. Not necessarily business speed, but to classify yourself as a business. The same speeds would be a little bit more expensive registered as a business over residential, but you don't have to worry about that cap. Now, granted, if your business isn't doing a lot of heavy internet stuff, it may not matter, and that's perfectly fine. But just knowing that it's a thing and it's there, doesn't hurt. Another issue with cellular that the other ones don't have, even dial-up doesn't have this problem, is the way that the traffic gets to you. So there is issues with public IP. So your public internet address, if you have an internet connection, just a normal internet connection, you have a public IP address, which is one number that gives you access to, or one number that your router uses, given to you by your ISP to get out onto the internet. And you can go do whatever you want, because there's this nifty thing called NAT, Network Address Translation, which takes all of the devices in your house and then uses that one number that was given to you by your ISP to be able to get whatever you want in and out, regardless of how much stuff is on your home network. That's Internet Protocol version 4, which most of the world is on still in the States. There's a lot of parts of the world that are on IPv version 6, which works differently than this. It's very different, version 6, but for most people in the States, they're still on 4. Cellular, though. Cellular, you have a public IP address on a cellular connection, but there's additional network address translation. There's additional layer of NAT that makes that connection from your cellular device to the ISP, which if you're only ever accessing stuff, so if you're only just asking to download things like watching movies and YouTube videos and watching your favorite streamers, accessing emails. You're never hosting anything. You're never giving something to the internet to allow people to connect to. You'll never have a problem with using cellular in that respect. But if you do need to host something and provide a service to the internet using a cellular connection, then you need to pay for a static IP. Now, static IP is just an address that never changes. But in the realm of cellular, in cellular, a static IP would give you a direct path to you through the internet without that additional translation happening in the background. This is something that no one ever sees. It just happens. But with an additional layer of translation, say I wanted to host an email server on a cellular connection. Terrible idea, but this is the example. If you want to connect to that email server, well, then you're going to put in the name of the website to connect to the email server. And then, actually, let me back up a minute. Say you want to send an email to that email server that's hosted on a cellular connection, which is a terrible idea. Don't ever do that. So you type in the email address, crazy person, crazy proto at cellular.com, right? Something crazy. When you click send, that email server will then look up the name, figure out what network address it's using, and then send the email to the server. Now, if you're on a normal cellular connection, what's going to happen is that address won't be directly reachable. It's just going to bounce off the NAT translation that happens from a cellular connection. But when you pay for a static IP, an address that just doesn't change, it's static. As long as that the cellular company doesn't put any other additional, translations. Oh, good evening, Spice Orange. Thank you for the follow. With any of those additional translations not happening, what'll happen is you'll make the connection, and then the email makes its way through. But if you're ever hosting something on a cellular connection, you will notice that even though there's settings for DMZ or demilitarized zone, which is what it stands for, which would allow something, or which basically opens all ports to the thing that you put on your network open to the internet, you'll never actually be able to directly reach it on a cellular connection because of the way that they actually do stuff in the background. I don't want to get too into it because honestly, I don't know a whole bunch about it myself, and I do know that it works differently, and I actually ran into trouble with it. There was one time I was actually trying to connect to a device. So there's a lot of different remote connection software that floats around that you can use to connect to people to help them. And some of them you actually have to open up a port to the internet to allow you to be able to make the connection. I made the exception in the cellular router, and then I went to connect to it, and it didn't work. I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, I opened the port, the firewall's not causing problems, and then I looked into it, and I'm like, cellular works different than the rest of the internet. So if you're planning on hosting something online, I would not recommend doing cellular. It is going to add some additional complexity that you're probably not going to want in your life. Can you make it work? Probably. Would you want to? Well, I'm going to vote no. But I'm going to leave that up to you. Because I know what I want to do, and I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. Okay, moving on. That's cellular. Am I gripes with it? It's not bad, but I know some cellular providers you can pay a one-time fee. It was exorbitant. Who was I looking at? Verizon. Yeah, Verizon has you can do the whole purchasing a static IP for your cellular device. It's an upfront one-time cost of $500 US. Which, if you think about it, as long as you're going to keep the line for a long time, that's a lot of money up front, but at least you wouldn't have to be continuing to pay for it. But if you cancel the line, well then, there goes your static. But again, that was a long time ago. I don't know what it probably is now. Yeah. Well, it kind of feels like it could be a bargain. I mean, if you think about it, because if you have, let's see here. So if we think about that for a quick second, right? And we have Where'd my mouse go? If I find a $500 upfront cost, and if I were to divide that over the course of if we say we did that over 12 months, so that's 2 years. That's $41 in change, in additional monthly for 2 years. Now, if I'm going to keep the line longer than 2 years, then that actually could feel a little bit like a bargain. And it kind of depends on whether you want to keep it or not, right? That's kind of what that boils down to. But like I said, if you're not going to keep the service, then it don't make no sense. And then we have satellite internet. Satellite is tough. I'm going to jump right to the cons of it because it's slow. I can tell you, I personally have not used a satellite internet connection, but for the several people who I've spoken to, it's very slow to use. I know that the speeds that they offer aren't terrible, but what you're going to deal with is the absolute killer known as latency. Because with a satellite internet connection, you're going to ask to go to the internet. Say Google in this example. I'm going to type on my keyboard, clacky, 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 clack, right? And I'm going to go to Google. I click send. It's now going to go to the router. The router is going to then ask the satellite dish that's mounted on my roof to please give me Google. It's going to beam that information up to the sky. And it's going to go above the sky, above the clouds. And it's going to go just to the outer skirts of orbit to hit a satellite. It's going to bounce off that satellite a couple of times and then find its way back to the ground at the satellite provider's central office or one of the repeaters. It's going to take a really long time to go up to space and then come back down again when you're going that far out of the atmosphere, which adds a significant amount of wait time. Now, a part of what makes satellites so slow is that wait time of latency. I wouldn't want to think about what it would be like to try to play an online game, like say a racing game, for example, where you have such a long ping, or a long lag in the latency of a time to ask, here's where I am, here's where I would like to be, and then you're in the middle of playing the game, and you turn your steering wheel a little bit, and then that has to go back up to space, come back down again, and then go back up again. And in the course of that happening, you've driven into the wall because latency. My God. One of the pros of satellite, though, is that it is available in a lot of places. Again, I can't spell. Meh. It's fine. I can't spell it, so I'll use a different word. Ha! Yes. Yes, terrible. It's everywhere. You can take satellite with you pretty much everywhere. Now, another con of satellite is that it is easy to interrupt. Rain, snow cause problems with satellite. Because what happens is that it causes an obstruction between you and space. And when there's something in the way between you and space, that causes problems. Fun story. I called a satellite provider because I wanted to get some additional information on them. It was a nice clear day outside. And I'm talking to the ISP, getting some questions answered, asking about available speeds. I think the fastest package that they had was like 35 meg down, I think was the fastest they provided, which, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's faster than DSL, but, the latency and the other, factors that make the technology feel slower, doesn't necessarily qualify to be, the best option. But, I was in the middle of the phone call with them, and the call dropped in the middle of the phone call. He's like, yeah, our service rarely ever goes down, it's super efficient, and then click, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I lost the sales guy. So I gave it a couple of minutes and I go to call him back. And it just rang busy. I couldn't call back. Their office went offline. And all I could think of is that please tell me that they were using their own satellite service. Because let me tell you, That had to be the most perfect example of to why I don't want to use satellite internet. I lost the sales guy mid-call. I mean, if that doesn't talk about the reliability, I don't know what does. You know, that's absolutely horrific. It's so bad. Oh, exactly. I kind of felt bad for him. I mean, I don't think I was actually going to have to go forward with actually getting the service due to my options for the area I was looking in. But it's just so perfect. I'm like, what can you tell me? Click. I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. He was actually mid-sentence too. I'm like, oh, that hurts. That's so bad. Couple weeks later, I did call back and I did hit the AVR, the phone menu that talks to you before reaching a human. I didn't actually want to talk to him again at that point. I just wanted to see if they got unbroken. They did, but oh, it was bad. So yeah, that's a little bit about satellite. Um, but yeah, I mean, if it rains, you lose your network. That was a big thing that people who do use it did tell me was a big problem with it. Now, I did put this as its own thing next to all the other ones here, and that's SpaceX. SpaceX is it's an individual company. That's the name of the company that provides low orbit satellite internet. Now, I specifically say low orbit over just normal satellite for a reason. I mean, yeah, there's probably a really good chance that he was still talking to me, but I mean, I didn't hear the call click. So I'm really hoping he wasn't just talking to himself for several long minutes before realizing that the customer disappeared. That's a good point. I don't know. I kind of feel like calling him back and asking. No, I'd feel bad. I'm not doing that. But yeah, with SpaceX being low orbit, there is still latency, but it's not nearly as bad as what normal satellite deals with. I know a couple people personally who use this service, SpaceX, and it's a fairly fancy satellite dish you plop up on your roof, and it shoots the request to the internet up into space, but it doesn't go all the way up to the edges of the Earth. Since it's low orbit, the satellites do stay lower in the atmosphere, which means that there's less distance that your data has to travel to actually reach a satellite. And the other thing about them that's unique over normal satellite is the density of how many satellites are actually up there in low orbit. There's tons of them, which makes a big mesh network. So a mesh network is just simply a bunch of devices that are connected to each other. That's it. So if you lose one in the mesh, say one of the satellites falls into the ocean, well, all the other ones are still connected to each other. So you don't lose your path. You just go a different way because the mesh breaks in a section, but you still have the rest of it, right? Think of bubble wrap. It's a bunch of bubbles. You can pop one. Well, there's still all the other bubbles that are on the bubble wrap roll that will still keep your stuff safe that are rolled up in that bubble wrap, right? The same idea with a mesh network. All the individual pieces talk to each other so that they can continue to do what they need to. Same idea with bubble wrap. If you wrap a very fancy, teacup, roll it all up in there, and then you throw it in a box, and then you give it to, the handlers in the airport. Well, good luck. The bubble wrap's going to do its best. But as it gets thrown and yeeted around and, maybe stepped on and sat on, hopefully it packed it well enough. But the bubble wrap will do its job. As the bubbles pop, the other ones will continue to do their job, and hopefully, you can have your cup of tea when you get to where you're going. And if not, well, maybe bring something less fragile next time. But the point still stands. The low orbit is faster. From what I understand, the reliability is better over satellite, so it's more reliable over satellite. Um, One of the cons of SpaceX would also still be latency, but not as much. So that lag time. Because anything that still goes up into, well, space, you can wave to the stars, like, hello, it's going to take time. And when it comes to, the latency that it takes from you to able to ask for stuff and for the stuff to come back, it's going to be a bit of a killer. For things that don't need to happen right away, like, super fast stuff like online video games, like if you're just like streaming, videos that are, real time, then it's not going to be super duper noticeable. You are going to notice load time. There's a couple of popular YouTubers that actually played with SpaceX and did an actual in-depth review of it. And I would absolutely recommend to encourage you that if you're in an area where you don't have any other option, because pretty much in the order of operations, if I scroll back here, in kind of order of preference in my mind, if there's literally nothing else and you can't get SpaceX, well, dial-up is better than nothing, but it's pretty much not usable in the real-time world. It just isn't. I couldn't tell you, other than the credit card machine in the middle of nowhere, where that would make sense to do. I would say at an absolute baseline that if you need a hardline ISP and you're worried about data caps, the DSL would probably be your best option in that case. The most common and the most provided in most places is cable internet. There's lots of speeds that are available, and that helps. A wide variety of flexibility. It's the most common, and it's pretty much rock solid. Like I said, if there's actual issues on the lines and there's actual trouble in the network, well, it doesn't matter, which one of these you choose, that still needs to be fixed. But that aside, and then if you want nothing but speed, well, go with fiber. Fiber is super fast. It's very reliable. Like I said, if you do run into an issue with the fiber plant, because again, brittle, because if you think about it, if you have a nice fiber line that is buried as opposed to being in the air, and your neighbor starts digging and they hit it with their shovel, well, guess what's going to happen to your internet connection? It's going to go offline because that brittle cable is about to get turned into Swiss cheese. And that happens. That happens with coax cable too. Actually, fun story. Speaking of coax cable, I just remembered. So one of the things about direct bury cable, I much prefer if we don't take service cables and stick them in the ground with no conduit. A conduit is just a tube that you run the wires through, and it protects the cable from damage. When you don't put them in a conduit, well, they're capable of having lots of bad things happen to them. You could have animals chew on them. You could have people hit them with shovels and other gardening tools. Or my personal favorite, run them over with a lawnmower. Yes, I've had that happen before, where there'd be internet, and then all of a sudden there wasn't, and then the gutters got ripped off the house. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm just looking at it. I'm like, well, that's probably not good. The gutters are in the yard. There's a broken lawnmower. I'm gonna need to make a couple of phone calls because this is gonna be a super fun call to the ISP. Like, I'm broken. I need you to come rewire me. They'd be like, what's your reason for the service call? Lawnmowers. Lawnmowers are dangerous. They're spinning blades of doom, and they're more than happy to cut through any cable you stick in the ground if it sticks up high enough. Usually when it's buried, it's not a problem, but if it's laying in the grass, you're gonna have a bad time. You better hope that cable gets buried before they come to mow the lawn. Or please tell your landscapers. Please tell the landscapers that the cable is sitting in the grass. Because if you don't tell them, they're gonna run it over. And then you're gonna have chopped service wire. It's happened more than once. I think this is probably about the third or fourth time I've had to deal with that in the last couple of years. It's always a fun phone call to make though. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Having the data lines along the power lines is just better for serviceability too. Because if you think about it, if you get a break in the line, they're not going to replace the whole line. They're going to have to repair it. And if it's buried in the ground, well, then you got to dig it up, repair it, and then stick it back in the ground. If it's just in the air, sure, it's susceptible to rain and other external factors, so the cable needs to be rated to be above ground in the rain. But also cable that's buried should be rated to be buried as well, with a thicker housing. it be what it is. So those are kind of the different ones. Like I said, fiber is good for the most speed. Cellular and satellite in SpaceX. Um, I'm glad you enjoy it, Spicy Orange. Um, my ranting, if nothing else, is fun to listen to. um, the with cellular and satellite, like I said, these kind of have their pros and cons. Since cellular is so mobile, one instance where literally none of the other options could work, it would have to be just these three, is if you were on a boat. Because if I'm on a boat, guess what I can't have? I can't have a hard line running somewhere. Because how would that work exactly? Am I going to have a long extension cord? And am I only going to be allowed to drive a couple 100 feet from the dock before I have to plug in another cable and then keep going? Like, you can't do that, right? So, if you're on mobile transport like that, a dock, or say that you're a truck driver, maybe you're moving goods back and forth, and you finish your shift, right? And truckers, they spend a lot of time on the road, and they either pull off on the side of the road and spend their evening there, or sometimes they'll pull into a truck stop. Well, maybe they want to stay connected to the internet too, since we all seem to use it. If you want to spend time with your friends and family online, well, cellular would be a fantastic option if you're a trucker, because then at least that way you can get yourself connected to the digital space, and then you can go hang out with your people, whether that be Discord or some other social means. But that's another use case, right? That's why there's all these different options. They all have different pros and cons to them, and that's a fantastic one with cellular. There's actually a couple different cellular providers that are specifically for marine applications, like boats, where the antennae actually gets mounted on a pole on your boat, and then you run the cables back into your cabin, and then bada bing, bada boom, power, internet, nailed it. So that makes for what that is. I'm going to switch us now. Hopefully my input didn't shut off, to the little bit of the lab portion that I want to do a little show and tell here. Excellent, it didn't shut off. Good. Okay, so let me pull up my controls so I can move the mouse. Okay, so as I had mentioned, there's a lot of different speeds that a lot of this stuff is tied to. But unfortunately, just like anything else, there's multiple pieces that involves you getting what you use and how much you use. So one of the biggest things that drives me absolutely bonkers about internet providers is the speeds they offer and what the different packages they offer. There's no Pokemon cards, hon. But oh no, yeah, see, yeah, All Star. This particular show and tell device is Windows 11. Because you never. That's what this is. This laptop was actually just for me to play with Windows 11, and then when I started to do the Twitch thing, it became a fantastic computer for me to do show and tell. Spicy Orange, you're making me think of all of the trading card days, bringing that up. I don't know. I've played Magic the Gathering. That's a whole bunch of fun. Probably the most recent card-based thing I've done. No, we don't want to update now. Get out of here. All right, we're going to connect to the test server. Okay. So, for a moment, I'm going to have you visualize something with me here, right? So these files, I normally use Windows 10 in my daily life, but I've had to move to Windows 11 for the new devices I've gotten my hands on. Like, I got myself a new personal laptop, and that's Windows 11. Specifically Windows 11 Pro, because I do some stuff with group policy that is locked in BitLocker. Those are things that aren't available in the home version of Windows 11 Home. which is fine. I mean, these are features that I use that the average person won't, and that's fine. That's why I paid extra for them. But in the case of our show and tell laptop here, the OS doesn't really matter all that much. This is just more for a visual marker. But yes, I have 3 different files here. All right, 10 gig, 50 gig, and 100 gig, and I named them appropriately. One of the things we're going to do here is we're going to transfer just for a little while, just so I can give you a visual representation of the speed, right? This is, okay. So what I just did is I told this 10 gig file to move from the server to this computer we're currently on. And I'm telling it to download it at dial-up speed. 56 kilobits per second. We're going to go slow, folks. Now, how slow is 56 kilobits per second? Well, it's slow enough that I could tell you that we're going to be here a real long time. Because the cool thing about this program is that when you set a data limit, it'll actually give you an estimated time remaining. And at dial-up speed, a 10 gig file is going to be approximately 6 hours, 7 hours. It's still going. Realistically speaking, I'd say this is probably going to take about 10 hours to transfer. It's bouncing between like 7 and 5. We are not going to sit here that long. We're not going to do that. I want to live. You do too. You're not wrong. Yes, I could take, oh my goodness. I could take the Lord of the Rings collection and read all of that on stream a couple of times over before this would be done. 10 for 10. We'd be here a while. We'd even have some time for, entertainment, maybe some tea and crumpets. I don't know. You don't know. Maybe some different donuts. I don't know, something delicious in the meantime. I may make a coffee. I don't know. I'm kind of hungry. We can do some stuff. Lots of stuff. Now, the reason that I like the idea of doing a little bit of a visual thing here, right, is because I could tell you that dial-up is slow. And I could show you that it's slow. And boy, oh boy, is it painful. Yes, a spot of tea. That sounds delicious. Irish breakfast is fantastic. That's what I have with my tea in the morning. It's pretty amazing. Add a little bit of honey. You'll have a good time. Some people like milk. Some like cream. I'm not about that. I just kind of prefer my tea as my tea. It's okay. Nice hot tea is good. Cold tea is good too. I think it's going to take a really long time for us to even reach 1% here. But if you were to want to load a web page, right? Well, it's not going to be 10 gig, right? Just because it's simply how slow dial-up is in comparison, I didn't even bother making a really small file for us to compare against. Because it's, well, it's slow. Like I said, it's going to take forever even to reach 1% here. And that is just simply what that is. Yeah, you're not wrong. Every breakfast for you is an Irish breakfast. Yeah, you should patent that. That's pretty fantastic. Yes, I am familiar I'm familiar in your case. That is the case, and that's okay. Yeah. I think it actually shows here when I click it. Does that show when I click on the box? Oh yeah, I have to hover over to show that. Yeah, so the speed is set here in kilobytes per second. Which yeah, it's rough. So I'm gonna switch us over to DSL speed. Now DSL speed is 300 kilobytes per second, or 3 megabits per second. Now you're going to see that the time left here is about to change fairly drastically from being several hours into about an hour, approximately speaking. The cool thing here is that even though I'm changing this threshold, you can actually see the speed in real time here in this number to the left. Let me actually, or no, I don't have a scene for that. I was going to zoom in on that, but I actually don't have a way to do so. Just going to move it up here a little bit. But yeah, it's a little small on your screen if you're watching on mobile. This is probably pretty hard to see, but it does show right here the speed of, you know, just shy of 3 megabits per second here, just kind of chilling. That you would have, right? Now, like I said, the guesstimate here is about an hour, and we're cruising, you know. Um, and if you had DSL internet, that might be as fast as you can go. Um, I've seen in practice some ISPs that offered 3 megabits per second over DSL, and they would never ever get more than 2.5 megabits per second down. It just would simply never go faster than that. And I think that's pretty much the penalty of being too far away from the central office or the co. Um, because again, DSL is responsible or it is limited by how far physically you are away from that central office. Um, as far as my knowledge goes, there is no repeaters that happen in a DSL connection. It's not a thing. It is with cable internet and coax. It could be a thing. It doesn't mean it's going to be, though. That's the thing, though. I mean, even though you pay for an internet connection, all these different ISPs or internet service providers can kind of get it to you in whatever way they see fit. And if that involves adding some additional things between you and them to make it work better, well, then they're going to do that. Um, Now, as we can see here, the 10 gig file has actually gained some speed here because, well, I gave it to it. Um, Now, that would be DSL. In the case of, I'm going to say a rural cable internet connection, right? So even though cable, you can get speeds, I think right now you can get speeds up to a gig over cable, 1 gig down, which is insanity. Like I said, obviously, do your research and see what's available to you because that's the other thing too is that even though, there's a certain speed up to you can get to, your area and what is provided could simply be different. Um, but a slow or entry level, right? I said that word again, slow. But even though we saw, dial up, we weren't going anywhere. That was like the epitome of slow. And the idea of rural cable, we're going to go 10 meg. Now the speeds are going to adjust here as it changes the threshold once again. And then instead of being like the half an hour it had left, it's only got 16 minutes now to be able to move along that 10 gig file. Now, the idea of how fast this can transverse, a lot of ISPs that are in densely packed areas can offer things like 100 megabits per second down or 200 meg down. Some of them, 3, 4, 500 down. Depends on what you need. There's also the up speed, depending on things that you do. In the case of live streaming, the number that no one talks about, and I haven't talked about up until this point, is your up speed. Because there's the down speed, which is the one when you're paying for a package. That's usually the one that everybody talks about and cares about. No one ever really talks about or cares about the up speed. That's how fast you can request stuff or push stuff up to the internet. In the case of someone who streams, I'm streaming right now. I'm talking to you through the internet. And the only reason I'm doing that in real time is because I have a up speed that's fast enough to provide this to you in a quality that keeps it A, smooth, and B, with, enough data that, well, the flip book is moving fast enough that I'm not jittery. We're cruising. And in the case of someone who live stream, you would want an up speed. I think you're required in the way of most providers to be between like between like 3 and 10 meg up, I think is kind of like the butter zone for that. Like if it's closer to 3, you're just not going to have a good time. You'd have to set your quality fairly low for the picture. Um, if I remember correctly, I think I actually stream in 720p. I don't even think I do 1080 for my quality of upstream, because the higher the quality, the more data it takes. Um, and if your up speed isn't super fast, then it doesn't work. In the case of actually being able to live stream or push stuff up to the internet, another example of something where the up number matters as opposed to the down number is if you do backups off site. Say that you back up your computer to a cloud provider, right? I'm going to pick on, say, Acronis, right? Acronis is a backup provider. You could pay to back up your stuff to their cloud providing service. Well, if you've got a terabyte of stuff in your computer and you got to upload it, well, you're only going to go as fast as your upload speed can go. And if that's 10 megabits per second, well, what you see on the screen right now is how fast we'd be uploading to the backup provider. Now, this is a 10 gig file I'm moving right now, right? And you can see here we're about just shy of a quarter of the way there, 25%. Um, and if that's what you're doing, that's fine, right? So I'm going to cancel this for a quick second here, right? I want to get the estimate of how long it would take to move at 10 meg. So say we had 100 gigs worth of stuff we need to back up, right? Now in this case, we're downloading it, but just picture it's going the other way. It's frankly, it's the same exact thing. Because we're still moving at the same speed and the estimates will still be the same, except instead of downloading 100 gig, I'd be uploading 100 gig. If I'm moving at 10 megabits per second here, the estimate is about 3 hours to copy that 100 gig at a 10 meg up, right? Now, if I do some real quick math on that, on my calculator that ran away on me here, if it takes approximately 3 hours to do 100 gig, right, and a terabyte is 1,000 gig, if I take 3 and multiply it by 10, that's 30 hours to copy a terabyte of information from your house to the cloud provider. If I divide that into a 24-hour period, that's over a day worth of time of constantly uploading until you're done. Right. It's 100% not terrible. Right. It's not horrible at all. Because the reality is if you're just doing a backup, then realistically speaking, it doesn't really matter how long it takes, right? But if you're pegging and using all of your available up speed to do that backup, well, then other devices on your network have to take turns requesting stuff on the internet. Now, the beauty of that is that a request to ask for something on the internet is much smaller than actually pushing something as big as 100 gigs up to the internet. When you ask for something like, say, Google on the internet, the request is very small, which is why, only a couple meg of available stuff. Train of thought, come back to me. When you have a request to go online, it's really small. And you can have a bunch of requests all back to back. And if you have, say, only, 1 meg of available up speed, realistically speaking, you're really not going to notice it all that much. It may take slightly longer to request stuff on the line to get online if you have a lot of devices in your house, but the actual download isn't impacted by that because it's a separate value and it's a separate direction. So yeah, we can see here at 10 megasecond, it is about 3 hours. So if you're doing backups, that's fine, right? And if you have less stuff, then that's fine too, Or if you use a cloud provider, like Dropbox, Box, Microsoft OneDrive, those different things, right? When you work on something and you click save and it synchronizes, it copies it up to their cloud platform. That's when the up speed comes in handy. If you had a big video, right? And let's just say again that this 100 gigs is a video now, and you're going to upload it, right? And you're going to upload it to, say, YouTube, right? Well, it's going to take 3 hours for it to get up to YouTube, and then it's going to take however long it takes for them to process it before they make it available in standard definition, and then it goes live. Um, but like I said, for the average person that doesn't actually provide something to the internet, whether that's backing something up or live streaming or doing something like that, it's not a huge to do. It's not a bother. Um, when it comes to downloading, though, you can see that hard limitation that can present itself. Now, I want to show you something here that is another interesting consideration. This laptop that's currently doing this file transfer is connected to a network that can go up to a gigabit. So that's um, let's see, did I not write that number down? I did not. Give me a moment. Since I've been talking in kilobits per second, I would like to give you that number. Let's see, that is in megabits. I want that in kilobits. Okay, so that's 6 zeros. 1 gigabit is a million megabit per second. So this number, so it's a 1 with 6 zeros on the end. Well, Spice Orange, a part of the reason why I do this stuff is to just throw the information out there. If you get something out of this, great. This is why I like talking about it, because there's a lot of considerations that go into technology, but to actually take the time to actually hopefully explain it in a way that makes some kind of sense, I hope you get something out of it. That's why I like doing this. Um, the Yes, the connection between this laptop and the computer it's downloading that file from is not hosted on the internet. It was just a local server I stood up just for this as an example that I could show you. Um, oh yes, Windows XP. Um, I really liked Windows XP. That was actually a really really nice operating system. Um, that was actually the precursor. That was the last Windows 95-esque looking operating system before Vista hit. Because XP looked an awful lot like Windows 95 with a new coat of paint on it. Um, and then Vista came along, and that was like the precursor to 7, but it had so many problems. It was such a problem child. Windows Vista actually got 4 different service packs to it before it was, I'm going to say, fully patched, but patched is good enough before they kind of moved on to something new. Um, but yeah, visually speaking, things have changed a fair amount. And that, it definitely shows, doesn't it now? Um, but yes, so the connection between this laptop and the server it's downloading from right now, I'm going to set this to go as fast as it can. I'm going to set it to gigabit speed. So just tell it to go as fast as it's capable. So instead of typing a million in here, I'm just going to set it to unlimited. Boop. I'm going to say that visually speaking, it's been a little easier to move through the operating system. Um, but when it comes to functionality and how difficult it can be at times, I'd say it's improved, but it's not without trade-offs. There's things I like about the old operating systems that just aren't a thing anymore, but due to the nature of how the world's changed, it makes sense. Like there's so much more security that's baked into the newer operating systems that the older OSs didn't have. But the older operating systems also had much slower hardware, but security of your stuff wasn't as big of a deal back then as it is now. So You can't really get away with using one of those older operating systems now because of how much the world's changed, which is why they've considered them end of life. Um, it's kind of funky. Oh, don't you come in here and talk about the Macintosh operating system. Oh God. I know so many people who enjoy the Mac operating system, and that's perfectly fine. I don't care. Use your Mac, use your iPhone, you know. Spend $1,000 for a hunk of aluminum to stick the computer on. I saw they did that to some people. I don't really necessarily agree with that myself, but if it makes you happy, and really what it boils down to is, can you use it, right? Because there's the Windows operating system, there's the Linux operating system, and there's the Macintosh operating system. There's a couple others that get mixed in there that are variances of each other. But if I give you a computer that's got the Linux operating system on it, in this case, I'm going to pick on Ubuntu because that's the one that's in my head in the current moment. If you don't know how to use it, can you do anything with it? Well, you can learn, right? Are you willing to learn? I hope you were, right? But if you actually can't do the things you need to with it, well, then it doesn't matter how good it is because you can't get the work done. When it comes to the marketed group of using some incredibly heavy applications, um, like say gaming or 3D rendering in Unity. Most of the Macintosh computers that I've seen that come off the shelf don't come with a super amount of power in them, which could struggle with that kind of stuff. A different, custom built computer or something else off the shelf could work better. But the idea goes back to, if you can't do what you need to on the operating system, then frankly, it doesn't matter how good or bad it is. It's useless. And that just simply is what it is. Now, I want you to notice something on the screen right now. I set that to unlimited, and we're still not moving very fast right now. What gives? This connection can go up to a gig, and I'm moving at 22 meg per second out of the 1 million, or excuse me, out of the 1,000 megabits per second I could be moving at, because I'm in meg here, not kilobytes. Why am I not moving that fast? Well, like I said, Spice Orange, it's preference. Obviously, whatever the business does, I mean, there's other factors that come into it. But in my mind, it boils down to, if you can't do what you need to on it, then it doesn't make any sense to have. I mean, some people prefer to work on tablets over laptops. Some people despise laptops, prefer tablets. They've got their own use cases, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, it helps when the companies don't do terrible things to each other or the people around them or their customers. But, that's simply just another factor to work into the mix. Um, and that, yeah, what you be. With this speed here, though, I'm not moving at a gigabit per second. Why am I only moving at 21 megabits per second when I just told it to go as fast as it absolutely can? It's slow because it's unlimited. You're not wrong. So it's not limited right now. I'm not telling it to meter itself. I'm telling it to go as fast as it possibly can. It does have a cap. If you could take a minute, I'm gonna drink a little water here. I want you to think about it. What could be preventing that from going faster? What piece of equipment in the computer is causing that to go slow? Take some guesses if you think. Oh, big stretch. Here's the answer to the question. It's the hard drive. The storage in this computer is a 2.5-inch laptop hard drive. It's a small hard drive with a spinning platters in it that go on around and around and around. Um, it's not broken though. That's the beauty of it. It's not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the storage. The storage is only capable of downloading at 22.5 megabits per second because of the style of hard drive it is. It's not an old hard drive. That's just the type of hard drive that it is. Which means that if I were to save this big file, to faster storage on the same computer, I'd be downloading faster. If I took out that 2.5-inch hard drive and installed a solid state driver, an SSD, that can download up to 500 megabits per second, well then I'm still not going to go at gig speed, but I'll be downloading from that file server to the full speed of the SSD is capable, 500 meg down. So instead of seeing 22 here, we'd see 500, but we still wouldn't go a full gig because that's the full speed that the drive's capable of saving that information at, which is a little confusing when you think about it, right? Because if I have, say, a 1000 meg internet connection, megabits per second. This is megabytes, so you'd have to move the 0 over by 1. Right now, if I was downloading this from the internet instead of locally, if this was a 200 megabits per second internet connection, this is actually using the full speed of the ISP, because 200 megabits equates to 220 megabytes. The difference between them is the letters. The B's capital when it's bytes, and it's lowercase means it's bits. It's incredibly confusing, and it's very easy to get mixed up, which is why I actually have this little chart that I left myself in the upper corner here before we started, just so I had something to reference. Because the reality is there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of zeros, and frankly a lot of commas when you look at numbers that are this big. But the storage is a big part of the play into this, right? Now, the connection I have on this laptop is very fast. It's gigabit. It's capable of going at 1,000 megabits per second. But say I was on wireless instead, and I didn't have a gigabit connection. Say I was on 802.11b, right? 802.11b is only capable of downloading at a speed of 11 megabits per second down, which means I wouldn't even be able to get my full 22 from the server because of the speed of the wireless adapter is slower than the hard drive is. So here's the game when it comes to being able to download stuff on the internet. You can only go as fast as the slowest thing in the way. If you're on dial-up, that's the slowest thing. If you're on crappy Wi-Fi, that's the slowest thing. If your storage is ancient, that could be the slowest thing, right? There's obviously other factors if the computer's doing a lot of other things, if there's a lot of programs open, if the processor can't go at the full speed that the interface is. So if it's a gigabit connection, say I had a gigabit SSD in this computer, I could go a full 1,000 megabytes per second. Then as long as the processor can keep up and actually go at that speed, then I can have the full theoretical limit, realistically speaking. I probably wouldn't, but I could, in theory, go the full speed. I could dump the clutch and peel out and burn rubber in the network and go as fast as I absolutely want. But the thing is that there's other factors that tie into this that slow you down. And that's also a little bit confusing. Because say I have two laptops on this network, right? And they both want to stream something at the same time. Well, if I have 200 megabits per second down, right? And one laptop is only capable of downloading at 10 megabits down, that means that there's additional bandwidth, right? So I have 200, and the device I'm on is capable of only downloading 10. Well, then that's another 190 megabits per second that is available from my ISP that I'm not using, even though I want to go as fast as I can. The device isn't capable, so I don't go faster. I go slow. I go slower. It's not necessarily a bad thing if it can't go the full speed of your ISP, but the reality is that you may not be getting full speed to that one device because of other factors. It's unfortunately not super black and white because there's other things that can get in the way. Right, it is annoying. It very much is annoying. That's also part of the reason why people get very frustrated or upset. Because if you have an older device, like this laptop that we're currently playing with right now, it does have a slow, older hard drive in it. And it's not capable of going super duper fast. That doesn't mean I still can't access stuff online, right? Because if I went to load up a video right now, it's going to load. And it's going to be fine. It's going to be smooth. I've played with this computer. It's capable of streaming. It's fine. But when it comes to actually moving large files, then this is where you'll see. This is an excellent way to see how fast your computer can actually save stuff. Because if you say you're downloading a video game, right? This is a 100 gig video game. Grand Theft Auto, insert the number here. Grand Theft Auto 6, why not? It's going to be 100 gigs. Maybe it'll be even bigger because, I don't know, Rockstar does stuff and or things. Then you're going to have to wait for your storage to be able to download the game. Now, if you have faster storage in your computer, well, you could always download your big thing to the faster storage in your computer, and then once it's downloaded from the internet, you can move it to the slower storage. You're still going to wait, but you don't have to wait for it to come from the internet, and then that saves you some. It allows you to have more available network to you, because once it's downloaded from the internet, you're just doing a copy from one drive to the other in your computer. It's not slowing other stuff down on your home network because it's happening all within the same machine, which is nice. But that is the chaos of that madness. And that's one of the things that factors into that. Something that drives me nuts, though, with internet providers is when they ask you how many devices you have on your network. If you're a landline ISP and you have, say, 100 meg down internet, and they say, well, if you got more than 4 devices, well, then you need the 300 meg instead. No, that's not true. That's not true in the slightest. You do not need internet that fast for a couple of devices. And it's frustrating, right? Because if you have a bunch of devices that are downloading and uploading a bunch of stuff all at once, oh yeah, I remember those older iPods having the hard drives in them. The iPod Classics. I actually helped a couple people replace the hard drives that died in those, because they still wanted to use them. Yeah, funny enough, if the hard drive dies, if you can carefully enough open them, you can replace them and then reformat it, and it works again, which is kind of nice. But besides that fact, if your devices aren't asking for everything all at once, then you're fine. And if you actually have a bunch of devices streaming in your house all at once, say you have a whole family, right? Say you have a family of 4, right? And everybody's on their device streaming Netflix, right? They're on a streaming service. One of them's on Netflix, one of them's on Twitch, one of them's on YouTube, right? And they're all doing their thing, they're all watching. Well, on an internet connection that's 100 meg down, you're likely not going to see any kind of trouble there. And you might hear from your ISP that, no, that's not enough. Well, here's the thing. When the connection's stable, there's not a lot of latency, and there's no other real external factors that are going to slow you down further, your router causes the traffic to take turns so that it goes back and forth and is able to ask for everybody's stuff. It may take a little bit more time to get to you, but you only generally tend to see, buffering if there's simply too many things going all at once. The point I'm trying to make here is that not every device you have on your network can go the full speed that your internet provider puts out, which is why a lot of the newer internet equipment has this thing called quality of service, or QoS. QoS is a mechanism that prioritizes the traffic on your network so that streaming media can get priority over something like an email or static pictures, because those can come in as fast or as slow as they want. But something that's moving, like a video or a live stream, you're going to notice if it gets choppy or slows down. But with the ability of the router to be able to manage all that stuff, then it's fine. You might hit some buffering if you kind of hit that roof of your pipe, right? Now, the reason I say pipe, I'm going to switch back to my other screen here. I want you to think about bandwidth for a second, a little bit like a water pipe. So, I lost my cursor. There it is. Okay. I want you to think about the internet for a minute in the idea of water pipes. If I have a 4-inch water pipe, and the water's only trickling through the pipe, right? So I only have a little bit of liquid just in the bottom of the pipe, right? Well, I could definitely push more water through that pipe because you can see the space within the pipe, right? Now, if I get to the point that I fill the space, well then visually speaking, you can see right there, I don't have any more room to push more water. The water's still going to continue to push, but I'm at maximum capacity for this pipe. It won't go any faster because it's full, right? In the case of the 8-inch pipe, I could fit that same amount of water in here, and I still have all this room to be able to push more water. Well, the same thing kind of happens on the internet when it comes to asking and downloading data. Your speed that your provider gives you is essentially a pipe. And then all of your devices on your home network that go in and out go through the pipe. And the more stuff you ask for, the more it fills up the pipe. And then once you reach the point that you've filled the pipe, well then you haven't run out of data. What's happened is that your router has to tell the stuff on your network to take turns. And then that's when you get buffering in the loading, right? If you're in a video and you have to wait for the rest of the video to load, well then what do you get, right? You normally get the red bar, which is the bar that's playing, and then you pause it and you wait for a little bit, and then you get a little white bar that generally shows up below it to indicate how much more of the video is loaded before you click play, and then it starts going again, right? Oh, I'm drawing that off the screen where you can't see it. That's better. Right, so then you kind of got that going on. Well, you're just simply waiting your turn at that point to be able to get more of the video. What bugs me about this is that even if the pipe is at capacity, the device itself isn't going to just decide to stop working. Because something that I've had told to me by multiple ISPs, and it's so far from the truth, if you are at we're going to say a 100 meg internet connection, so you got 100 meg to use, right? And then you end up using all 100 meg for, a solid couple of hours. If the device that's giving you this speed of 100 meg is capable of going up to 600 meg, right? 600 megabits per second. Well, it's not going to lock up when it gives 100 megabits per second and continues to run at that speed. It's fine. Something that ISPs will tell you is that the equipment will simply lock up once you've hit the roof. You're not going to lock up. What's going to happen is that it's going to queue requests, and there's going to be some time for it to take, for it to ask for the stuff, and then for it to come back to you. Just like going to, the driver's center, right? You get a ticket, you get your ticket, you sit down in the chair, and you wait your turn. The same thing happens when you ask for more stuff than your internet provider can give you at the time because of what you've paid for, speed-wise. You just have to wait a little while, and it's fine. The device isn't going to get upset and crash. If the device is capable of going much faster than the speed you're limited at, well then it's just simply a soft limit, and that's the end of the day. Think about getting into a sports car for a second. If the sports car can go 160 miles an hour, and you travel it at 60 miles an hour, because you don't really feel like getting pulled over or being sent to jail, it's not going to suddenly decide to explode or the engine to die because you kept it at 60 miles per hour, right? If the governor won't let you go faster than 60, then the car can still handle going faster than that. It just won't because it's told it's not allowed to. Just like when you pay for internet speed. You're paying for 100 meg, so they're going to give you 100 meg, and you're not going to go faster than that. And that's fine. But the thing is that the device isn't going to just decide to stop working when you hit the roof. Because if it does, then it's either not working right, or B, someone's doing something they shouldn't. So, those are data limits. Those are different ISPs. And, wow, I've ranted at you for about 2 hours now. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, that's terrible. Oh, wait! No! No, don't do that! Oh no. Oh boy. Well, good evening, everybody from Purple Chaotic Dragoness' stream. I was just wrapping up here. Oh, welcome in. Okay, welcome everyone. Oh, hey, Cozy, hello, Cozy. I hope you're doing well this evening. I absolutely love that little gif. Oh my word, y'all drive me crazy. Oh my word. Welsh Furry Gamer, welcome in. Thank you for joining me in this little case of chaos that I consider the internet. Oh boy. The Kraken. That's a fun name. I like that. Is that the Cove? Oh, Cove Dwellers. I can't read. Oh my word. Yes. Okay. Thank you for now promptly coming in and breaking my brain. I love that. Good. Thank you. Oh. All right. Well, we're not going anywhere now. All right. That's fair. Yeah. No. Okay. We'll enjoy your evening there, Welsh. Thank you for popping in. Go enjoy your evening. Yes, I am a toaster on the internet. I have a fun time being a toaster on the internet. And you know, there's nothing, that's not the right scene. There's nothing wrong with being a toaster on the internet. It's fun. Yes, indeed. Well, thank you, Purple Chaos Draken. I very appreciate you bringing your folks over here to say hello. I did miss a comment there. Hang on, I gotta scroll backwards. Oh, this. Yes, I saw something else in here. Where is it? I thought I saw a question amongst the madness. I'm going to scroll real fast here. I thought I saw a question about hotel internet. Hey now. You're not wrong, but I'm not going to admit it. Oh wait, I just did. Yes, fantastic. All right, the question was something about a hotel internet. I think something about buffering. I don't know. I missed it. It's lost in chat. It's fine. We're fine. Yes. Oh, no, that's the wrong scene. We don't want that. I mean, oh no. I mean, yes. I mean, the laptop I have on the bench right now. I mean, that's it. It's, you know, very laptop shaped. But yes, hotel internet. So it's actually kind of funky with hotel internet. Some ISPs you'll notice that like when you're in a hotel that you may buffer, you may not. But internet at hotels is actually kind of weird. Because you have the whole, yeah, this thing could be a laptop. I mean, you're not wrong. It's a crappy Dell. I'm not hiding that. I'm being booped. I'm being booped in my chat. Hey now. That's adorable. Don't do that. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that slunch time. I lost your comment in the insanity there. Some hotels will buffer and some won't for a couple different reasons. Um, if you're lucky and you're in a fancier hotel, you'll have internet that is fast enough to accommodate you, the other guests, and the people who are running the hotel. If that's the case, then you're going to have a good time. And it's all on the up and up. Um, where the problems come in, though, is if it's a slower ISP. So what ends up happening is that the hotel staff will end up getting... I'm on the wrong scene. That's better. Bear with me here. We're going to play with some numbers. So we have the hotel, right? And say they pay for a 100 meg internet connection, right? So we got 100 megabits per second at the hotel, right? Well, if they're smart about it, they're not going to just let anybody and anybody who's anyone just use all of it whenever they want. What they probably will end up doing is they make it so that you're only allowed to use a portion of that. So they may say that for all of the hotel guests, they may only allot 10 meg of the 100 that the internet has at the hotel. Yes, it's me with my calculator. You saw Cozy what I did to the our master of kindness. Don't think I won't math you. I have that cute calculator floating around here somewhere on this computer. That was fun. I'm glad I brightened up Trick's day a little bit. He needed it. Oh my word. I'm horribly distracting myself. This is a good time. So if the hotel has 100 down and they allot 10 to the guests, well, that means that the hotel will have 90 meg left for all the hotel staff, and you, as a guest, get to fight all the others for that 10 meg worth of speed. Usually, almost always, the hotels do throttle. If it's a fast enough internet connection, then usually it's not the end of the world. But you do hit buffering because of a couple things. You get slowed down. And being slowed down, well, you go slower. Fancy that, I know. Shocking material! Or you can be put against some additional filtering, right? Because since you're not... The hotel is not required to provide you a network that's unfiltered. They absolutely can filter you and block you from going to certain places if they don't want you to. Most hotels don't really do that, but they absolutely can, because they are providing something to you under their terms. And if you don't want to use it in their terms, which means you just don't use it then. So that means that you can get throttled. That means you could also get blocked from going to certain places or using certain services. The other thing too that's a little funky about the hotel Wi-Fi is usually this thing called a captive portal. So a captive portal is a screen you get redirected to. So you try to go to the internet. You can type in on your computer, I want to go to google.com, right? And then you click enter. And you don't go to google.com. You end up getting redirected to a different page, usually with the terms of service, which basically says that you're not going to do bad stuff on their network while you are at the hotel. And that ends up being, well, fine, right? You click OK, and then it takes you to Google. Well, from that point on, then you then have your access to your internet, and you have this speed that is offered to you. Oh yes, lunchtime. That's another good point. Some hotels do actually offer faster speeds to you for a cost. And usually what they do is they'll roll that additional cost into your stay. So then when you end up going to check out, you'll see the additional cost for that visit. Actually, there's actually a couple different places that you can see that you can actually pay for internet. You'll find that happens on places like planes and also public buses too, which is where you will find that. That's true. Yeah, because if you're in an area in the hotel where there's not really good Wi-Fi coverage, then you'll go even slower. And the other thing too that I touched on a little while earlier before you beans came in and joined me is the actual speed of the technology that you're using. Because something that happens is data caps. right? So in the example here of the laptop, right, we were talking a little bit about downloading stuff from the internet, and what this ends up being, right, is this laptop right now is hooked up to gigabit. It's a network that can go up to 1,000 megabytes per second, but the connection between this and that server is gigabit, but I'm not moving a gigabit. I have it set right here to go as fast as it wants to, but it won't. Why am I only going 20 megabits per second? Excuse me, megabytes per second, it's capital B. Well, the reason that is that the hard drive that's in this laptop is only capable of going, downloading and writing to the disk that speed. That's the catch 22 of anything with connections on the internet. You can only go as fast as the slowest thing in the way. And it's kind of infuriating because you end up getting chewed on by that. Yeah, absolutely. Throttling on Wi-Fi, and that's like they said, like with the way that they split off the data on like the hotel Wi-Fi, it absolutely can get sectioned off, where you only can use 10 meg out of the 100. That's a throttling. Or another phrasing for it is quality of service, or QoS, where it prioritizes data based on what it is. Um, it's not used only for evil, it's also used for good. In a home network, you will find that people will turn on QoS for their streaming services, so that stuff that's streamed like YouTube and Twitch and things like that get a higher priority going in and out of your home in the internet than other things like saying, all right, it's lunchtime, enjoy your evening, sleep well. I just noticed your different colors in different consoles. Huh, funky. Um, train of thought. My train of thought left me. Ah, the caboose left the station. Throttling. There we go. QoS. That's better. Yes. So with the quality of service, you can have it set so that what ends up happening is that the stuff that's real time that you need to have happen really, really fast ends up getting the push to the front of the line. So then there's a better opportunity for that stuff to get to you in a speedy enough fashion. Um, Things that don't need that quality of service is something like downloading a Word document, or if you're accessing just a web page, right? You don't need the images and the text on the screen to come through super duper fast, because there's no time limit on something like that. When you're watching videos on the internet, you need to be able to go a certain speed for that to actually look like a video without hitting buffers and starting and stopping and seeing little pixels and the little guy on the screen going, ah, what have you done to me? Things like that. You hit that little pothole in the internet when you slow down too much. And that's where buffering and other nastiness tends to come into play. With that, the madness, as it's known as lag, comes in, and then we're all a little sadder for what it's worth. Which is actually why I'm actually going to circle back here. I want that one. Yes, we are looking at the boop top. A perfect name for a laptop. I don't know. Here's a bunch of all y'all out there. What should we call the laptop? I thought the boop top was a fun name. Anybody else got some fun ideas? Because I will actually name it on the network the boop top. I'll do it. I don't care. Oh yes, dial-up. Yes. Yes. Oh wait, no. Hang on a minute. Oh no, I'm gonna give you a throwback to dial-up. I'm gonna take you back to the pain there for a second. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I'm gonna visually hurt all of you. We're we're gonna copy a 10 gig file at a dial-up speed. Okay. Here we go. That's what you get to look at for the next 6 hours. Oh yes, it's gonna hurt. Or the speed limiter actually has to switch from megabytes down, and it just has to drop back down. It's bad. It's so bad. Oh, good lord. Yes, yeah, I put this beat up here for dial up here on the little notepad because I needed the point of reference. It hurts. Um, yeah, see what you did? See what you did? You were left unattended. I'm left unattended with the internet, and unfortunately, yes, it is riveting. It is. This is top tier content. Moving a 10 gig nothing file at dial up speed. This is a 10 gig nothing file, I'll have you know. There's nothing in there. I actually used the command in command prompt to make a 10 gig nothing file. Oh god, it's terrible. 100%. it's it's as bad as it sounds, really. Um I think it's like fsutil. I don't know. But yeah, if you want to be able to actually here, let's do it. I'll make another nothing file. I've got space to kill. Hang on a minute. Let me find that command. Yeah, 10 minutes for a web page load. That's if you're lucky. While it's basically having a nice verbal, audible chat with your internet service provider. Like, can I have Google, please? And it's like, hang on a minute. Let me get the cards out. And it goes through the little index. Just like when the public libraries had the little index cards. And that was the index. Good luck finding anything if you're, a child from the internet age. No one would know how to use that in today's age. I can guarantee you that. That's when you actually go and talk to a librarian because they're the only people who are going to be able to help you at that point. Let me see if I remember what this thing is. Let's see here. We're going to create a file. Yeah, it was the internet or phone and not both. And that was the thing that was kind of funky about that, though, because with dial-up, um, no, it's really weird because dial-up was the first internet connection that was available to consumers that was well analog. Actually, it wasn't digital because it was an actual conversation that your computer had with the internet service provider. It was an actual audible set of sounds. It sounds an awful lot like a fax machine if you wanted something to somewhat similarly compare it to. Um, and oh wait, no, wait, I heard it, but I didn't see it. What happened? Okay, something happened. Is it not going to tell me what happened? Nope, it's not going to tell me what happened. Okay, that's cute. Thanks, Twitch. Appreciate you. Um, if someone just subscribed, I'm very sorry I didn't see it. I don't know where it is. And it didn't appear on the HUD. Oh wait, that's right, because I don't have the overlays turned on the screen. I can't see that. Okay. Note to self. I'm literally going to grab my phone and make a note on my phone. Oh, I need to fix that. Yes, I don't have the overlays turned on. Yes, I am the big dumb. Let's see. Overlays on each capture card. Yes. Yes, this is a perfect time for testing is when we're live. This. Yeah, it's funny. I thought I actually had all of this somewhat working. Well, I mean, I kind of did somewhat. I don't know. You do so many stuff and things. I swear. Yeah, it's funny actually. Is speaking about dial-up because I actually had a friend of mine I was talking with that we were trading stories about early internet stuff, and something that they did is they used to spend time online. There was some online games that you could play on dial-up. I forget which one it was he was telling me, but he would stay up incredibly late playing these games, and there was the one time that his parents told him he had to go to bed at a certain time, but he didn't do it. He stayed up late playing games online. Fancy that. Things we were doing during dial-up, we still do now. We get older, but yeah, the child lives on. Uh, his parents came home the one evening real late and shut off the power to the house and just waited. And at that point, they're like, "Oh no, they know I was playing on the computer," and just waited. And they heard, the running of feet running across the floor as they pretended to run to the bedroom to be sleeping for hours on end, when in reality they very much knew what they were up to. Yeah. Yeah, no. That story was so much fun. They're like, yeah, I knew I was in a lot of trouble at that point. I'm like, yeah, no, like don't do stuff like that. Oh. All right, we're gonna make one of these dummy files because yeah, we can do that. So let me get a terminal window opened up here. We're gonna set this to me here for a minute while I do this. Because I don't remember what folder this exists in. So bear with me while I stick my head behind the curtain here and see what folder these are being saved to. It's here somewhere. I will find you. When I find you, I will click on you. You know, if I was smart about this, which is questionable at this point, I could just look. Oh, it's transferring. It won't. Really? It's transferring, so it won't let me. Wait, nope. I'm having an instance of dumbness. This is not the server. This is the client, so I'm not gonna be able to find the thing I'm looking for. But that's okay. That's okay. We're gonna put it somewhere else. Gonna switch directories. Am I gonna do that? I am gonna do that. Okay, good. Nothing up my sleeve. I have a terminal window open up now. This is the command prompt. And something you could do with this. Oh yes, I am full of goob moments there, All-Star. It's patent pending right there. Yeah, so see, now here's the beauty of that. Even though I'm going to make another nothing file, we're still not even up to 1%. This is still moving at dial-up speed. Yes, no, this is going to continue to hurt. At some point, maybe I'll upgrade to DSL speed. But no, you're going to sit there and you're going to watch it, the nothing move for maybe about another 2 minutes. So these are dummy files I made so that we could actually have something to move and actually, transition on screen, right? But I want it to be a certain size so I could actually, talk about a set size of something, right? Well, I mean, sure, you can open up a Word document or make a video or something, but you could do this cool thing that's built into Windows and just make a dummy file and use it to move stuff around. Now, I have to caution you about using this because even though it makes a dummy file, it does take up the amount of disk space that you tell it to use. So when I tell this to make a gig size file, it's actually going to take up a gig on the hard disk of this laptop, which is perfectly fine if you know that ahead of time. What you don't want to do is tell it to make a file that's bigger than the storage that you're in. Because if you do that, you know what's going to happen? You're going to run out of disk space. That actually might error. I actually don't know what'll happen. I don't know. I'm not really willing. I am not willing to risk blowing up this laptop while we're talking. Maybe another time. But not right now. So, with the command in hand, I have it here somewhere. All right, so it is a fs util, and we are going to make a file. We're going to, let's see here. We're going to create new. And then I should just be able to give it the name of what I want. So this is going to be a 1 gig file. It's actually going to be called 1 gig. I'm not going to give it any extension because it's not a real thing. And we are going to make this. That's right. I have to give this number in bytes. So bear with me a moment while I see how many bytes are in a gig. 2 bytes. Because it's a big number. It's a really big number. That's 1 gig in bytes. It's a big number. There's no way I'd remember that. I'm going to click on it on the keyboard. It has now it has now informed me that it has created my 1 gig file called 1 GB. and it's been created in the downloads folder. So, nothing up my sleeve. I'm going to do a dir to get a directory listing of what's in the downloads folder. And what do we have here? We have a file that's exactly 1 gig in size. Now, granted, most of you aren't familiar with looking at this stuff from the command prompt. I understand this. We're going to look at it in a more friendly version. I'm going to pull up the downloads folder. And I'm going to pull up the properties on it. And there you are. A 1 gig file. That's exactly to the T. Nothing up my sleeve. 1 gig. Exactly. Down to the right, the individual byte. And it's actually really funny about the way that the storage names go. Because it starts with a, let's see if I remember this. It's a bit. And then 4 bits is a nibble. And then 4 nibbles is a byte, I think is the way it goes. It's super funny. No one ever knows that there's a nibble, and it's a real thing that is. It's a real thing that exists. It's super stupid. Hang on, how many bytes is in a nibble? Yes. All right, half of a byte is a nibble. Okay, I'm not making that up. It's real. Hang on. I'm gonna pull that up on stream here so y'all could see my results from Google. Cause I kid you not, it sounds stupid, but it's true. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that's something, if nothing else, from the scene that you just learned is that there's a unit of measure called a nibble. You're welcome. All of the furries, do with that information as you will. That's a thing that happens on the internet. Oh, I'm glad that you worked IT and you've never heard that. Honest to God, it's so much fun. That's one of those useless pieces of trivia that I genuinely enjoy. Because it's useless. No one ever needs to measure something in nibbles, but you can. That's the best part. Oh my god. What did you just say? My Wi-Fi runs. Yes, your Wi-Fi runs on many nibbles. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean that is an absolutely an accurate statement. I don't know if it's exactly that many nibbles, but. I mean, we might just put in there, how many nibbles makes a gig? You know what? If you asked it, I'm gonna find out. This is information we need in our lives. Oh boy, that's a big number. Oh boy, yes. So if you were thinking of nibbling your way to a gig, you're going to be nibbling for a long time. It is a really big number. Let me add some commas in there. All right. Let me see here. So that's 1,000 million. So 2,147,483,648 nibbles to a gig. Yes. Now, if any of you are fans of the show Jeopardy, I can guarantee you the chances of this being on the show is next to non-existent. But now you've seen it. You're not going to remember it. Frankly, neither am I. See, now that's the tragedy of it, though, because if your internet starts acting up, that's likely something out in the wild that's actually been nibbling on your wires. So there's a certain amount of nibbling that's okay. In this case, stay away from the service wires. There's a fair amount of squirrels that actually do enjoy chewing on coax cable because they like the flavor of the cable, and they chew through the outer insulation and then mess up the copper, and then you end up having issues with your signal to your house. So there very much are nibbles on the internet. There's good ones and bad ones. Those are the bad ones. This is some of the good ones. We still are not at 1% at dial-up speed. Yes. Oh, it's terrible. It's so slow. Oy vey. Yes, it's terrible. It's tragic. That's dial-up for you. It really is. All right, I'm done looking at that. Let's go at least DSL speeds. That's horrific. Oh, goodness gracious. Nope, nope, get the period out of there. When it comes to getting your internet, I've seen some DSL that can go faster than 3 megabits per second, but I don't know. In practice, that's about as fast as I've seen it go. But look at that. Even a few seconds on DSL speeds. We got our 1%. Let's go. We're going to still go slow, but we're going to go faster slow. Oh, I believe that. I 100% do. The squirrels, they could be crafty little dudes. Um, that's it's just what they do. As a matter of fact, I actually had well, I mean, the only thing that's more dangerous to coax cable than squirrels is lawnmowers. If you've ever had direct buried cable to provide service to your house, I think one of my favorite things that I've ever had witnessed was when different areas of the world will do different things with providing the service to your place. Um, if the telephone poles are too far away, or if you don't have telephone poles where you live, there's a lot of parts of the world that don't do telephone poles, so all the cable is direct bury underground. You can end up getting a coax connection that needs to be buried in your yard. But unless you put a conduit in the ground, what will end up happening is that cable is going to lay in your grass for a little while until the ISP buries it. Almost every ISP that will install service won't bury the cable the same day. I've installed a lot of internet in a lot of places and they just simply don't do it. There's another team that's responsible for sticking it in the dirt, which makes me sad because when there's snow and snow shovels, that's bad. And during the summer, my favorite, lawnmowers. Lawnmowers are my favorite thing to deal with cables that just lay in the grass. Because you know what happens? The cable's good for about a week. And then they come to cut the grass. And then not only does it cut the cable, usually it rips it off the house. There was one instance of an install that I had to deal with that so the lawnmower hit it, it ripped the cable, and it ripped the gutters off the house with the cable from the service. So now there's a cable sticking on it's laying in the dirt. I don't think the other side of the telephone pole got actually damaged. Because that was above ground, but the cable was laying in the grass. And then all you see is just this disaster. That was a super fun call to the landowner because I'm like, we have a problem. I need some help because some bad stuff happened. Um, you know, some absolute madness. But I mean, it was a fun call to the ISP though. And I'm like, y'all need to come replace the drop. They're like, what happened? I'm like, it got destroyed. It's gone. It's gone now. I need another one. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, here's the thing. You left it in the grass and it's grass growing season. So it's gone now. It's very gone now. And that it was very tragic. But it's what it is, you know. That's okay. It's fun though doing the different technical work. It really is. My word. The I don't know. I mean the newest one though, I was talking a little bit about SpaceX too here. That's available because so what seems to be the most difficult thing with having internet is getting your hands on it if you live in a rural area, an area of the world that just doesn't have a highly dense population, which generally indicates that internet service providers don't really care about the people who are far away from them. Because what does that mean? That means that they have to spend their money, thousands of dollars, to give you the service. There's been a couple of instances that I got quotes to actually have these providers extend service. And the cost of sticking about 3 or 4 telephone poles in the ground and adding about 1,000 feet worth of cable equates to about $25,000. And that includes the cost of pulling permits and about 3 months worth of time to build out the service. And that's only to go a short distance up the road. Not very far. But the cost of running all that as to why generally we see in rural areas why getting internet's hard. Which is why we're talking about it, you know? It's tough because, I mean, for some people, there are some people in the world right now, even though I'm showing you in that horrific example of dial-up, that's all they have as an option. You know, and what's been taking over that is cellular in most of those places. Normal satellite has got a lot of problems with it, but this newer option, SpaceX, they're low orbit satellites, and they work together in a mesh, right? And with mesh, all the different satellites work together. So then if one goes poof, then the data just wanders its way around to other places. But the trick is that they're lower in orbit, or low orbit satellites, so that you shoot up to outer space, you hit one of those low orbit satellites, and then you come back down to a central station, and then you get online. It's significantly faster than standard satellite. Standard satellite's got a lot of problems with it, with the fact that you're not low orbit, you're floating around the edges of the, floating around the edges of the Earth. So you have to go from your computer to space, and then come back down again after you bounced off a couple of satellites. It's incredibly slow. It's infuriating, and if it rains or snows, you don't have service. And frankly, I don't know about you, it tends to rain an awful lot on this planet we call Earth. And frankly, it's incredibly infuriating to have the idea that you can't be online because it's raining. Don't most people generally stay indoors and watch movies and stream games when it's bad outside because it's bad outside? Well, the idea of losing your internet when it's bad outside is kind of counterintuitive for most of us. At least I know it is for me. Fancy that. Yeah. That's fun, though. But then again, I mean, you know, different providers provide different things. And the idea of cellular, I mean, if you're on a boat, well, a cable isn't going to do you any good because, well, unless you're planning on running a really long cable, you're probably not going to go that far from the pier. You know, so use case is a big part of what you choose as a cellular option in what you plan to do. You know, cellular has an issue with being double NATed, network address translation. So there's one public IP on your mobile device that goes through a couple different routers before it actually gets out to the internet. So if you're going to host something, like hosting a mail server or something else like that to the internet, cellular is not a good option for that because it won't work right. You know, in the case of the Verizon network in the States here, you can pay for a static IP. The last I checked, it's like $500 that you pay for it. And then you end up having a static IP that you can then host stuff on. But to be completely honest, I don't like the idea of hosting something on a cellular connection anyway. That just doesn't really seem like a good idea. Cellular is a good backup option if you have an area that, you know, you need high availability, right? So I mean, in the idea of a residential setting, generally you have one internet connection and you just get whatever you can. And that works out to be okay. But in the case of a business, or something like the idea of a data center, right? Because when you go online and say go to, you know, this conglomerate known as Twitch that we're on right now, there's not one computer responsible for allowing Twitch to operate. If there was, I'd kind of like to see it. But it's definitely more than one. It's an arrangement of computers in a data center that are working together. And the last thing you'd want is for that data center to go offline. Because if it did, you'd all disappear. I'd disappear. That wouldn't be very great. Which is why they have backup options. You know, keeps everything moving somewhat smoothly. And having, you know, backup options, you know, tends to help. And that's okay. You know, I've officially reached the point that my brain doesn't work anymore. In the midst of anything internet related, I'd like to ask, does anybody actually have any questions? I'd be open to answer some. If I can, I will. And if I can't, I won't. While you guys are thinking and spending some time marinating on that, I found it! I don't know if you're still here, Oh Dragon's Party Wagon, but thank you for the follow. I did finally find it where it is in my HUD. I appreciate the follow. there's going to be more silly computer talk. So if you enjoy this conglomeration of madness, you know, feel free to follow. Um, I do this usually on Wednesdays, like every other Wednesday. It seems to be more of working like. But yeah, I like to talk about, computer stuff, and that's what I do here. I did not invent the internet. I just spend an awful lot of time dealing with the internet, and more specifically when it doesn't work. Um, I I have an awful lot of fun making stuff work on the internet, though. Um, you know, because servers on the internet that people connect to, someone's got to make them work. I just so happen to be one of those people, which is actually why I have network jacks on the side of my Protogen here. That is actually the color coding of the 802.11b standard. Orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. That is the layout of a network cable. If you take a look at a network cable that you have just chilling out in a laptop bag, the internet too. I'm pretty sure that's called IPv version 6, which is already a thing. It's just not widely adopted everywhere. But I like your idea there, Spice Orange. Oh, goodness gracious. All right, good. All right. With this madness, I'm going to ask you to just stay with me a brief moment while I see where I'm going to wander us all off to. All right, very good. I see that the Formals is online, so we're gonna go say hi. Apparently that's not signed in. Let's try that again from a console that actually is. Gonna make this difficult on myself because I can. Alrighty, folks. I appreciate you all stopping in and saying hello. Like I said, if you'd like to see more from me, go ahead and click the follow button. I do more chaotic things on stream here. I like to service stuff on stream. I've changed batteries in a UPS unit, worked on a laptop, and I don't know, I'm just gonna play with technology. That's what I'm here for. We're here to chat about it and have a good time, take a brief moment from the world and try to get a bit of a better understanding of this technology we use. Because, at the end of the day, what ends up happening is we spend a lot of time using it. And it's one of those things that, oh yeah, Pyro, go ahead. What was your question?
Oh yes, the sleeping pills.
A certain amount of devices are connected to my Wi-Fi. No more can join it. Oh, your Wi-Fi equipment might actually have a limit on it and how many devices can connect. That's usually the case of cellular. Cellular usually doesn't allow more than 10 or 15 devices at one time. That's just a limitation of the hardware. There might be a way to change it, though, depending on the manufacturer of the device. So I'd say do a little look up in the manual. You might be able to find a way to adjust those settings to be able to connect more. All right, very good. Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye!